The 14th Amendment very clearly states at the very beginning of it, all persons born or naturalized in the United States. It would not say naturalized, people who have taken the test, people who have become citizens. It would not say naturalized and born unless the people born were to be born of citizens. Otherwise, why would it have mentioned them being naturalized? What is the purpose of mentioning them being naturalized if the people who are born here to foreigners don't need to be naturalized, don't need to be citizens? Then why mention naturalized? Why mention it? It's so obvious. It's so obvious that it means people born to citizens of the USA or people who are naturalized into the USA are citizens. That's what it means, and the Democrats are trying to screw it all up, as always, because they hate America. Well, the Supreme Court has sadly stricken down Trump's edict that he made when he first took office for his second term as president, and by my discrimination, well, I really can't help but look at 4 people, one of which was even appointed by Trump, and notice that all 4 of them are women, and all 4 of them voted in favor of birthright citizenship. And in the state of the USA, as it is, and many other white countries as they are, with so many different people of different skin colors and cultures and religions, I feel like sexism has become the new, peak. Everyone always says it's racism, but sexism has reached a point beyond racism right now in these particular countries. If it was I don't know, like a Somalia or something, presumably everyone in Somalia is the same color, I don't know. But if it was something like that, then racism would probably be more of a racial taboo. But right now, or a social taboo, I mean, obviously it'd be a racial taboo, but right now in America, sexism, I think, is it's the peak of our problem. And I don't know their exact reasoning behind it, but all 4 of the women decided to go against this, not to mention the Chief Justice Roberts, who is a male. So I thought I'd start with the amendment itself, Amendment 14. Now, of course, the Constitution is an irrevocable proof of what you need to do. You need to obey it under all circumstances, unless, of course, changing it would benefit the Democrats, in which case you're okay with changing it. But for some reason, when it comes to Republican ideology or just any kind of pro-America ideology, it must stay as it was before, which it was poorly written. Now, I'm going to ignore sections 2, 3, and 4. Section 2, you could read that to literally anyone, and they would have no idea what it even says. It's really poorly worded, at least by today's rhetoric. Section 3 is about how people who have committed treason and such, who have funded foreign enemies of the USA, they cannot become any kind of elected official. But then weirdly, Congress can actually allow them to if they vote to. So you can commit treason, and then Congress can say, yeah, but let's let them be the president anyway. Super weird rules written by some of these people. And then Section 4 briefly covers slavery, which is it's more about the debts that were owed, because we weren't such a united nation back then, so who owes whom debts. But Section 1, which is the point in question here, states, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of the citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. That's what the amendment says. Now, this is from the AP, where they say exactly what I just said, the exact quote from the amendment, but in the middle of that, they've said, the second sentence contains 2 of the most important clauses in the Constitution, the due process and equal protection clauses. According to the AP, the Associated Press, they apply to everyone in the U.S., not just citizens. So to quote again what I just said, no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. So it clearly says citizens of the United States, but the AP, whoever wrote this, is trying to say that it applies to everyone in the U.S., and if you're trying to say that it applies to everyone in the U.S. regarding birthright citizenship, then you're really trying to say that it applies to everyone in the entire world, which is erroneous. This is all because of this first few words of the Section 1 of the 14th Amendment, all persons born or naturalized in the United States. It wouldn't say naturalized if they weren't talking about citizenship to begin with. All persons born. The only flaw here is that they didn't say born to a citizen. So then what? You need every single sentence having anything to do with this to make sure that they include "to a citizen" in it? Anyone born to a citizen. That's clearly what they meant. We know this law is about the slaves, right? Like that's what it's about, because slaves used to be property. And then we have the Dred Scott decision where the Supreme Court decided that slaves were property. And then that was repealed through the amendment, right? That's what happened. This is all about slavery. That's what it's about. It's not about some random person from some foreign country on the other side of the world coming over and crapping out their baby in the bathroom of an airport and saying, oh, look, they're an American now. That's not what it's about. But that's what the Democrats are trying to make it about, because the Democrats want infinite immigrants in order to fuel their machine. Obviously, we all know this. This is obviously the case. So this article here just gives a couple quotes of what was said by the Chief Justice Roberts and also by one of the dissenters, Justice Clarence Thomas, a black man, a free black man in America who is sitting on the Supreme Court, the highest court of law in the country, the supreme power of the country. Clarence Thomas wrote a 91-page dissent, whereas Chief Justice John Roberts, said, citizenship, then and now, was the right to have rights, to freely participate in our political community. The framers of the 14th Amendment extended that promise to, quote, every freeborn person in this land. Chief Justice John Roberts wrote for the court, citing congressional debate over the amendment, and said, we keep that promise today. The right to have rights. So everyone in the world has the right to be an American? Is that what you're saying? To freely participate in our political community? What, the CCP has the right to do that? Is that what you're saying? The framers of the 14th Amendment wanted the slaves, the ex-slaves, to be considered citizens. That's what the 14th Amendment was about. It was about overturning the Dred Scott case, right? That said that slaves were property, even after the Civil War. And so the people who've overturned Trump here, his order, is Chief Justice Roberts, Justices Sonia Sotomayor, Elena Kagan, Amy Coney Barrett, which everyone says her full name, and I don't know why, it's really annoying, and Ketanji Brown Jackson, who determined that birth on U.S. soil plus being subject to U.S. law is enough for citizenship, which is utterly nonsensical. If you were born on U.S. soil, of course you're going to be subject to U.S. law. You'd be subject to the law of any country that you were in at that point in time. Being born on the soil doesn't... Well, anyway, going on to the people themselves, Ketanji Brown Jackson, female, from D.C., appointed by Joe Biden. Amy Coney Barrett, from Indiana, appointed by Donald Trump, even though everyone's still trying to paint this as if Donald Trump is stacking the Supreme Court. This woman was appointed by him, and she went against him. Elena Kagan, from Massachusetts, appointed by Barack Obama. And Sonia Sotomayor, from New York, appointed by Barack Obama. The fifth one was John Roberts, from Maryland, and he was appointed by George W. Bush. Now, John Roberts, as the only male who went against this, I decided to read a bit about him. He's presided over an ideological shift towards conservative jurisprudence on the High Court, in which he has authored key opinions. I'd never heard jurisprudence before, so I was reading about it, and it says, by the 20th century, the legal positivism, that's a hard word to say, positivism, of H.L.A. Hart and Hans Kelsen had become the dominant focus of jurisprudence. And legal positivism, in the legal philosophy, legal positivism is the theory that the existence of the law and its content depend on social facts, such as the acts of legislation, judicial decisions, and customs, rather than on morality. So you're telling me that the Chief Justice applies his logic to his thoughts that have nothing to do with morality, but rather social facts and customs? You know what? I think I'd rather have a Chief Justice in the Supreme Court who is more focused on morality. And going back to the list of judges, him and the 4 other people who went against Trump here were all women. The only women on there. I don't know how much soy is in Chief Justice John Roberts, but we've got 4 women and 1 man standing up against this, and I can only look at it and say women are trying to protect other women. That the poor oppressed woman coming from some other country to make a better life for herself in the USA. But she's exploiting loopholes, isn't she? She's exploiting a poorly written constitution or amendments or whatever you want to say, to allow her to exploit America. She's not some poor innocent victim. And even if she was, even if you want to go along with this, are not the women of this country saying that they are sex slaves if they can't have an abortion? Right? Isn't that what they're saying? They're allowed to walk around naked in front of children without being arrested, and they're apparently slaves. That's what they say. It's not this the old Jim Crow 2.0 thing. Like, are we not all the Democrats? Are they not all saying that America is the worst country in the world and they want to destroy it? So why would you want to protect other people coming to America and having their children here, and those children being a citizen of the USA? Because really, in that regard, by your own terminology, are you not saying that that child being born here is being born into slavery, being born into bondage in the worst country in the world, America? It's nonsensical. You're defending them doing that, and you're also trying to attack America. You should be advocating for those children being born wherever they come from, Cambodia, Nigeria, whatever. Like, why? Again, it's always a case of people wanting to have their cake and eat it too. The executive order signed by Trump said that children born to people who are in the United States illegally or temporarily are not American citizens. But there's so many people trying to spin it and make it as if it's going to remove citizenship from anyone who isn't white. Like, it's going to remove citizenship from black people who've lived in this country for hundreds of years. That's not what it's going to do. I mean, at least as far as I can understand, that's not what its purpose is. It specifically states people born to illegal immigrants or people who are temporarily in the USA, because that's how the loophole works. And Justice Clarence Thomas, a free black man on our Supreme Court, wrote, "The court today takes the extraordinary step of holding facially unconstitutional the president's order excluding the citizenship of children from foreign temporary visitors and illegal aliens. In doing so, the court adds to the sad history of the 14th Amendment, which was designed and understood to secure equal rights for the freed blacks, but has instead been repurposed for political projects that the Reconstruction Congress did not support." So again, it's the Democrats trying to take something that was meant to give citizenship to black people. And Justice Clarence there saying black Justice Clarence Thomas there saying blacks. In his terminology, people will lose their mind at you on social media if you refer to people as blacks. You're not allowed to do it's offensive to them to say blacks, but here he's doing it. Freaking most powerful black man in the country, and yet he's doing it, and no one's going to complain about that, of course. I mean, well, what am I saying? Democrats probably hate this guy because he's not a suck up. He's not a kiss ass. So this system was in place for black people who had been enslaved by white people, by more than white people, actually. Even the natives had slaves. It was designed for black people to become citizens. That's why. Everyone knows this. It's obvious. But for some reason, and I think we all know the reason is so that they can get infinite votes from their infinite immigrants, the Democrats are in favor of allowing everyone to just hop on over and get their citizenship. This article from AP writes that Trump reacted furiously to the late February tariffs decision, saying that he was ashamed of the justices who ruled against him and called them unpatriotic. This is, again, something that really triggers people, being called anti-American. But if you were acting in the worst interest of America, then I would say, yes, you're acting unpatriotic. He also seemed to recognize the court was likely to rule against him on birthright citizenship too, and used Truth Social platform to criticize dumb judges and justices, and stated that wealthy pregnant women from China and elsewhere come to the U.S. to give birth so that their newborns will have American citizenship. And it's not just the wealthy people. That people have admitted to doing this, which I'm going to end this video on. Trump's order would have upended widely held views that the 14th Amendment confers citizenship on everyone born in the U.S., excluding only the children of foreign diplomats and those born to a foreign occupying force. I don't think this is a widely believed view. Like, if you ask the average person who has citizenship in the USA, I don't think they're going to say that baby that was born in an airport bathroom. I don't think they're going to say that. I think the average person, if you were to approach them honestly, with a bald-faced question and say, do you think this baby born in an airport bathroom from a mother whose citizenship is only from Russia, do you think that baby should be an American citizen? I don't think the average person would say that that's the case, but for some reason that has become the narrative. They're clearly talking about people born to citizens. Again, it's just ridiculous. And so the people who stood up against this in court, they said, in a series of decisions, the lower courts have struck down Trump's executive order as illegal. The decisions have invoked the High Court's 1898 ruling in Wong Kim Ark, which held that the U.S.-born child of Chinese nationals was a citizen. And this is the liberals, the woman who may as well be a liberal. I mean, she's a white woman from a red state, but she's appointed by Trump, but she's a liberal. Basically, if they're a white woman, I just assume they're a liberal. And of course, Chief Justice Roberts. So they've basically cited this case from 1898 where a Chinese nationals had a kid, and they said in that ruling it was decided that he was an American child. Like, are you saying that no one in the past can ever be wrong? If a precedent is set, it must be correct. Isn't that the entire point of amendments to the Constitution? That they were wrong, and they were amended because they were wrong. That's the entire purpose, isn't it? It's just crazy to me. One of the justices, Kavanaugh, said he sided with the majority because of a federal law that made those children citizens, but he dissented in that the order, Trump's executive order, does not violate the Constitution, which is an interesting fence sitting there. I mean, how do you even approach this, really? Well, you've got federal law that decides one thing and a constitution that decides another and amendments that are somewhere in between. His view would enable a future Congress to change the law to restrict birthright citizenship. And of course, this isn't over. Of course, it's going to come up again and again and again until it is eventually changed, because the USA cannot be the orphanage of the entire world. And then lastly, the Trump administration had argued that the common view of citizenship is wrong, asserting that children of non-citizens are not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States and therefore are not entitled to citizenship. Of course, the average person, if you approach them honestly, they would say this. If you walked into someone else's house and gave birth in there, that would not make them a child of that family. It would just mean that you gave birth in their house. Obviously. Says more than 250,000 babies, more than 250,000 babies are born in the U.S. each year, and they would be affected by this executive order. We have more than 250,000 non-citizens being born in our country every year and being granted citizenship. And think about how that multiplies so very quickly. But more unbelievably, they try to frame it in such a negative way. They'd be affected by the executive order, as if they're going to be like attacked in some way or some like. No, they would just be citizens of the country that their parents came from instead of citizens of the USA. It's not the baby's fault that they're born in our country, and it's not our fault that they're born in our country. Why should they get like it's their parents' fault? So, and I'm not saying the parents have done any harm either. What if you have like a woman who's like 8 months pregnant and she's just touring in the USA with no intent to give birth there, and something happens, maybe she's injured or whatever, she goes into premature labor, and then she has to give birth one way or the other. She has to give birth in the USA, and now her baby's an American citizen? That's insane. There's no logic behind that at all. She wasn't even intending to do it. That's just what happened, right? It's stupid. They say that while Trump has largely focused on illegal immigration in his rhetoric and actions, his birthright citizenship restrictions would have applied to people who are legally here in the United States, including students and applicants for green cards or permanent resident status. But none of those people are citizens. None of those people are nationals. That's the important thing to take note of. And the thing is, they might never be citizens. Those people might never nationalize to America, but they'll have children who are nationals to America. And more importantly, their children, as citizens with birthright citizenship, can then make their own parents citizens. Their children can grow up and be the sponsors of their own parents or their siblings or anything else. Like, it's so obviously BS, and yet Democrats are defending it.
All right, let's bring in presidential historian now, Mark Updegrove, for more on how President Trump has reshaped some of the legal landscape here. Mark, it's good to see you. So remind us how many Supreme Court justices Trump has appointed, and have we ever seen so many under a different administration?
Honored to be on the hipster news, Gio. Good to see you. Donald Trump in his first term appointed 3 Supreme Court justices, Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett. That is a lot by any standard. So Donald Trump, in his first term in office, effectively appointed 1/3 of the Supreme Court and added to the 3 conservative judges, making this 6-member supermajority that we now see on the Supreme Court, Gio.
Right. Well, I mean, you can just look at who's appointed by who. 1 by Joe Biden, 3 by Donald Trump, 2 by Barack Obama, 2 by George Bush, 2 by Clinton, 2 by George Bush, 4 by Reagan, 1 by Ford, 4 by Nixon. I mean, it's not really that unusual going up here. It's not that unusual to have 4 or 5. I mean, look at what Roosevelt did. Like, he's got the entire country on the Supreme Court. It's actually pretty normal to have quite a lot of people they're trying to frame it as if it's like some weird thing. Look, Abraham Lincoln, he had 5. Abraham Lincoln had 5 people on the Supreme Court that he appointed. Now, again, he came in a time of war, but still, you have the guy who freed the slaves appointing 5 people on the Supreme Court, and they're trying to frame it as if this is all Trump's fault. But Amy Coney Barrett, because we have to say her full name for some reason, Amy Coney Barrett was someone appointed by Trump, and she voted against him in this particular case, didn't she?
Mark, having that many justices appointed by a single president, what kind of influence does that have on high-profile issues like the ones we just saw and other cases to come in the future?
None, it would seem, because, again, he got pushback. They struck down his executive order, including the woman that he himself appointed. Now, closing this down, everyone is trying to feel like this amount of pity for these people who need to come to the USA and have their children. There's no pity to be had for these people. They're not good people. This is a story of someone from Argentina, an Argentine immigrant who came to Florida to have her son. She saw the passport as tangible evidence that he's American, but now people like her are in legal fights over Donald Trump's executive order that would deny citizenship. The children are born in the United States to people who are in the country illegally or temporarily, right? This is a quote by her. It's attributed to her anyway. It's funny because I actually booked him for his passport application appointment even before he was born. So a 28-year-old woman decided that she was going to rat her way into America by flying over here and crapping out her kid onto our soil in order to use a loophole, to abuse a loophole, to exploit our Constitution so that her son could be in the USA as a U.S. citizen, and that would get her in the USA as a USA citizen. This is not some person who needs her help. This is a rat to be cast out, to be purged, to be stomped. This is someone who wants ill for our country, and we're supposed to protect them because, well, you see, it doesn't say citizen, it just says born. No. This is BS, is what it is. Who were the ones challenging Trump? The pregnant mothers and their advocates challenged the order. Of course. The precious feelings that all of the women have. Oh, they're poor, gentle, kind nurturers. No, they're rats. They're rats trying to sneak into the country to have their rat babies in the country to abuse the system. That's what's happening. Everyone can see that's what's happening, but they don't care because they're sexist. And I've been reading stories about these people who, they're born in some foreign country, wherever, and they've actually plotted out, not necessarily getting pregnant, not exactly a scheme, though those people have been accused of doing that as well. They've been accused of scheming to get pregnant and then come to the USA and then have their child in the USA and then use that as a point of entry for sponsorships for whoever, for their father who is like some CCP spy or something like that. But I have read about other people from like third world nations who have gotten pregnant and then they have just plotted out to come to the USA and exploit this loophole. Like, why must we deal with this? Why must the USA be the world's orphanage? Why do we have loopholes? The 14th Amendment very clearly states at the very beginning of it, all persons born or naturalized in the United States. It would not say naturalized, people who have taken the test, people who have become citizens. It would not say naturalized and born unless the people born were to be born of citizens. Otherwise, why would it have mentioned them being naturalized? What is the purpose of mentioning them being naturalized if the people who are born here to foreigners don't need to be naturalized, don't need to be citizens? Then why mention naturalized? Why mention it? It's so obvious. It's so obvious that it means people born to citizens of the USA or people who are naturalized into the USA are citizens. That's what it means, and the Democrats are trying to screw it all up, as always, because they hate America. Anyway, it's basically just a looping conversation because they're lying, really, to get what they want, and there's no way to win an argument with a liar. There's only one thing you can do with liars. So, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, please do the YouTube things.